Hey, I'm Jay, and you're listening to Mindset Monday, a new series on the More Than podcast created to be the perfect dose of inspiration and motivation while giving you tangible tools to shift your mindset in a more positive direction. After all, your life is only as good as your mindset. I'm so glad you're here. What's up, fam? Welcome back to Mindset Monday. Today's episode, we're going to talk all about friendships and navigating friends, especially in your 20s. I did a TikTok about navigating friendships and how to handle friendship breakups in your 20s. And it popped off because so many of you are in that season where you're really struggling with friendships. And I remember what it felt like to be in that position. And if I can give you guys just a little bit of wisdom or a little bit of mindset shifts surrounding your friendships, I want it to help you guys to not take friendship so personally. But I know that friendship breakups can often hurt a lot worse than actual breakups because you're often so much closer to these people. And if you're navigating friendships in your 20s, you've probably grown up with a handful of really good friends that you've gone through a lot of your life with, and you're now transitioning into a brand new season. And maybe they don't fit in this new season as much as you thought that they would. Or maybe they're moving on away from you and you're kind of feeling like you're left behind. So I did a Q&A on my Instagram stories and asked you guys to send in some of your questions or situations surrounding friendships and friendship breakups in your 20s. So I'm going to cover a handful of those in this episode. And if this applies to you in any way, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. But I've always been one of those people that have never really had a lot of friends or a giant friend group, which always tends to surprise people because I have a lot of acquaintances and I am an outgoing person as long as I'm comfortable. Like if I have one close person with me in a brand new atmosphere, I'm totally fine. But if I am flying solo and I'm completely by myself, that's something I've always struggled with and I get very introverted. And it hasn't been until really my 30s that I'm at a place where I feel confident enough to go out and make friends or show up in brand new situations where I don't know people and put myself out there to make friends. So if you're not yet in that place and you're in your 20s, or maybe you're even a little bit older and you haven't gotten to that place yet, that's okay. That is so normal. I used to get really down on myself and beat myself up because I wasn't more social or I didn't have more friends or I wasn't going on these giant girls' trips and I wasn't surrounded by this really big group of friends. And it used to be an insecurity point for me. And the older I've gotten, the more I've learned to truly value having a small circle of friends. If you have a handful of people that truly know you and are genuine friends that you know would be there for you no matter what, that is more valuable than having a whole bunch of acquaintances. And it's okay to also have seasonal friends. If you have situational friends where you go out and you party with these friends, or you go to events with these friends, or you have girl nights with these friends, or whatever it is, and they're separate, and then you just have a handful of close people around you, that's okay too. We all have varying degrees of our friendships. No two friendships look the same. So if you're insecure about that, or if you're sitting there scrolling through your Instagram and you're seeing all of these friends or people that you know with all their friends going out and doing stuff, don't let it beat you up. Because there's a good chance that there's dynamics going on in those friendships you don't even know about, nor would you want to know about. And there's a reason that you are you and they are them. So don't compare your friendships to other people is really what I'm getting at before I dive into these questions, because I've been there. I know how difficult it is. And I also know that not having confidence in your friendships sucks. But the older you get and the more selective you get with your friends, the stronger your friendships will get. So there is hope if you are in a season right now where you're really struggling with the friendships that you do have, or you feel like you want to refine your friend group, that is okay. So let's get to a handful of these questions because I think a lot of you guys can resonate with them. The biggest question was surrounding friendship breakups. And When we hear breakups, we always think that it's something super dramatic and there was this big fight that had to end everything. And I have been in that position before where there has been one situation that really ended a friendship. And that's not a fun place to be because neither party gets closure. And I can speak from experience that a lot of the time when you're able to move past that point and look back in hindsight, you can see where you were wrong in some of those situations. You can have a little bit of guilt about how you handled things and you can feel bad about it, but pride gets in the way and often makes it so that you will never apologize or you will never own what you did wrong. And just know that the other person most likely feels that same way. Or if you feel horribly wronged because of somebody, if you had this one instance that was this whole blow up situation, you feel wronged, you don't feel like they handled it right, you don't feel like you handled it right, and you don't want to resolve it or have that resolution, you may always have that unsettled feeling when it comes to that friendship. And moving forward from that, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to reflect on a huge situation like that and see, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong in that friendship? How did I handle it that I'm not proud of, so that you can learn from it and so it never happens again in any of your relationships? If you're at the place where you want to continue a relationship or rekindle a relationship with that person, you can always reach out and apologize and speak your piece and have a mature conversation now that emotions aren't so invested. But if you're not at that place or if they're not receptive to it, I think learning from your mistakes and learning from those experiences is so valuable to make sure it never happens again. We've all heard that there's two sides to every story, but there's really three sides, because there's your version, there's their version, and there's the truth. There's the reality of what actually happened. And it's impossible for both people to see that at the exact same time. And with growth and time and wisdom, you guys might both be able to see that later on down the line. So if it is a dramatic breakup like that, I know it hurts. I know it sucks right now, but it won't suck so bad someday. And if that friendship wasn't meant to last to begin with, then you can have peace knowing that they were a seasonal friend. They were in your life for a season or for a reason, and now you can move forward. The next question was feeling left out in your friend group and how you can deal with that. This often happens if you have a bigger friend group, and by bigger, I'm talking more than two people. It's easy to feel left out because you have multiple people that have multiple different emotions in that group. And if two people go off and do something, or if a couple people go off and do something and you don't feel like you were involved or included, it can be hurtful. And that hurt is so valid. But it's also important to not take things so personally all the time. Because if they're true, genuine friends, they're not purposely trying to hurt your feelings. They're not purposely trying to exclude you or leave you out. And if it genuinely is bothering you that much, the mature thing to do is to bring it up to them and say, hey, it really hurt my feelings when I wasn't involved or wasn't included in that. Or, hey, this is how I'm reading the situation. Is that how you intended? And being able to have a mature conversation with a friend is an indication of a mature and true friendship. If you reach out to your friend group and say, hey, this happened and it really hurt my feelings, or it didn't sit right with me, and that person cannot have a mature conversation with you, that is not somebody you want in your life. As painful as that is, wouldn't you rather know that now than to continuously walk on eggshells, worrying that you're going to upset that person? That's not a true friendship. You want people that are going to show up for you, have your back, and be mature. And if they're not able to do that, if they're not the person to do that, then you're really not missing out on anything by not having them in your life. Even though that sucks, even though that can feel really painful, once you get over the hit from that in the very beginning, it's going to allow more space in your life for real, genuine friends that can also have mature relationships with you and mature conversations with you. I hope that makes sense. The next question was dealing with internal jealousy in friendships and how to regulate your emotions so it doesn't destroy your friendships. Internal jealousy in friendships is very real, very valid, and something that I think if we're all being honest, we've all experienced and we've all felt. It's a very icky feeling. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is don't view your friendships as competition. If you are viewing them as competition, that is such an indication that you have a lot of self-worth work to work on. Say that 5 times fast. That's hard. But if you are insecure, or if you are really struggling with your confidence, or if you feel really lost or unhappy with where you are in life right now, it's so easy to be jealous and envious of other people. If you're taking that out on the people that are closest to you or to your friendships, that should be such a red flag internally and really cause you to do some deep reflection. Whether that's just working on your confidence, whether that's getting yourself into therapy, whether that's journaling, whether that's talking to somebody about it. But if you're taking your insecurities out on your friendships, you're not going to have a whole lot of friends. Friends build each other up. If you're struggling with something and you bring something up to another friend, they will inevitably hype you up and try and cheer you up and empower you. That's what friends do. But if you are taking out your jealousy and your insecurities on them, they can only be your punching bag for so long. And often when you're jealous, it's because they possess something that you yourself want. So look at that. Is it because you're jealous of them because they have a certain career that you would really want? Okay, well then what can you do to set yourself up for a different career? If you're jealous of their looks, if you're jealous of their boyfriends, if you're jealous of whatever, those are internal things that you want yourself. Do some reflection there. Do some inner self-improvement so that it doesn't spill over. Because let's face it, jealousy is really, really ugly. Now, on the flip side, if you're the punching bag where you're seeing that your friends are jealous and they're taking things out on you, one, remember that it has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. That's easier said than done because I know how emotional and how hurtful it can feel to have people close to you acting out and lashing out at you. But like I just said, jealousy is very ugly. So knowing that it has something to do with them and not to do with you is a really mature way to handle it. The other way you can handle it is having a conversation with them, saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm perceiving. What's going on? Do you want to talk about it? If they can't have a conversation with you about it, it might be time to distance yourself. Because the friends that you choose to have in your life are supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Think of your energy every day like an iPhone battery. You can start the day at 100%. Situations, people, as time goes on throughout the day, is either going to drain you or it's going to power you up. Take inventory and take note of how you feel around the people closest to you. Are you going around certain friends and you leave that girl dinner or you leave that walk or you leave that phone call feeling really drained? Or are you leaving that feeling powered up and fueled up and inspired and excited? Once you take note of that, you can start being more intentional about how you're spending your time. And just because you're distancing yourself a little bit from that friend doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them, anything wrong with you. You're simply just protecting your peace and choosing to spend time around people that are lifting you up. That doesn't really need to be a conversation unless you want it to be a conversation. It can be subtle and both parties are going to get the hint. All right. Next is when to know if you should distance yourself from a friend. Well, I feel like I covered that a little bit just a second ago, but distancing yourself from a friend doesn't have to be such a big deal. I think when we think friendship breakups or we think navigating away from a friendship, it needs to be this really big deal where it's a conversation or it's a fight or it's finalized or something happened and that's why we're no longer close. The reality of growing up and friendships changing is that sometimes you just drift apart. If you're not spending as much time with them, if you're filling your time with some other things, they're also going to get the hint and start filling up their time with some other things. If they don't get the hint, you can have the simple conversation of, I'm just busy doing some other things that are filling me up in my life, and I just don't have as much free time. It doesn't need to be a big dramatic conversation unless you want it to be. I think the way that I've navigated so many different friendships or seasonal friendships in my life too, especially friendships where there's distance between us now, is you don't wish poorly for them. You can still talk to them when you have the time to. You can still text back and forth. You can see each other socially every now and then, but this isn't somebody that you're texting all day. It's not somebody you're having FaceTime dates every week. It's not somebody you're constantly going out with. Slowly separating and slowly distancing yourself is okay. And the older you get, the more natural it is. Because when you get in a relationship or when you have a really busy career or when you get married or when you have kids, the kind of friendships that are actually worth having are the ones that you pick up right where you left off. They're not high maintenance friendships. They're not high maintenance relationships. If you need something from them, they're there at the drop of a hat. But they're not needy. They're not constantly taking offense to whether you're around or you're not around. Those are the kind of friendships that you want in your life, not the ones that you're hanging out with because you feel guilty or because you feel bad or you feel like a bad person if you're not spending more time with them. That's just part of maturing and growing up. And if they're not on the same page as you, that's okay. It's okay to grow. It's okay to change. It's okay to evolve. And it's also okay to spend more time around people that you're meeting in a new stage of your life. I talked in the beginning about friendships that maybe you had growing up, or college friends, or friends that knew one version of you. Well, the older you get, and maybe you've moved to a new place or you started a new career, you're changing, you're growing, you're a different person than you were 5 years ago. And that's a beautiful thing. That's something that should be celebrated. But it's easy for some of those friends to make you think that that growth or you changing is not okay, that there's something wrong with it, that you're different. You don't want to spend time around people like that. You want to invest time into people who know this new version of you and can foster your growth and can help your growth. So remember that iPhone battery situation. The more you start being intentional about who you are around and who you spend your time with, the more you're going to start feeling fueled and energized around those people, and your relationships are going to become a hell of a lot healthier. And at the end of the day, that's what we all want. Healthy relationships, healthy friendships, low maintenance friendships. And if you have somebody being high maintenance, it might be time to cut them off and distance yourself. The last question is how to make new friends. And I feel like I've become a little bit of an expert on this throughout my 20s because I moved a lot in my 20s and went through a lot of different types of seasonal friends where when I was in the pageant world, I had a lot of friends that were doing the same thing. When I was in the modeling world, I had a lot of friends that were also in the industry. When we moved to Texas, I had 0 friends. I didn't know a single person here outside of family. And it was more difficult later in life to make friends because I'm married now. I live in the suburbs. We're in a house, not an apartment. And meeting friends takes more intentionality. And the shift happened when I started putting myself out there more. When I started doing things that I actually enjoy doing, that's when I met like-minded people. I'm in the creative field, and so going to some of these creative events, I meet a lot of like-minded women there. Or when I joined this podcast studio, there's a lot of incredible women that also record here that I started reaching out to and getting to know, and suddenly they became friends. That I think doing things that are already interests of yours, you're going to gravitate towards people with similar interests, and that's how you build and maintain friendships. But you're never going to meet people if you don't leave your house, if you don't put yourself out there. If there's an event going on in your city that you really want to go to, but you don't have anyone to go with, show up by yourself. Put yourself out there. I've never done Bumble BFF, but I've heard amazing things about it, especially if you're in your 20s and in a brand new city. There's a lot of other like-minded people that are also just trying to make friends. Give it a try. Like, don't be closed off to the idea of making new friends, and don't feel weird about putting yourself out there. I get you have to have a certain level of confidence to be able to do that. So just like I remind you in every single episode, working on your confidence and your self-esteem is the number one thing you can do for yourself that will impact every single one of your relationships, your friendships, how you carry yourself in your career. Confidence is the foundation of that. But exercising that confidence muscle by continuously putting yourself out there is going to help it to become so much more natural. The last thing that I've done, and I'm very proud of the fact that I do this, is sliding in the DMs, especially the DMs of girls that you just know you would be friends with. You get that similar vibe. If you're in a city, you know they're in that city, you know you guys would have a lot in common, slide in the DM and just say, hey, I'm new to the city. I would love to take you out for coffee, or I'd love to meet up for a glass of wine. Everyone wants friends. And if they're in a season of their life where they're open to meeting new people and expanding their friend group, it's going to be a hell yeah. And a lot of the time, it only takes one friendship to introduce you to so many other friends. When I first moved here, I went to an event where I didn't know anybody. I was standing in the line for a margarita. The girl right in front of me, I recognized from social media. I started talking to her and she introduced me to her entire friend group. And because of that, we expanded to meet all of our couple friends here. We found our church through that. And I met a whole lot of people by that one simple decision. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't get in your head about it. It is so normal to pick up your life and start new, somewhere new. And having new friends makes it that much more exciting. If you have any other friendship questions, slide in the DMs. I'm happy to answer any ones that I didn't cover, but I just want to end this by reminding you that if you are navigating a difficult friendship season right now, it's going to get better. It always does get better. And lean on the people that are actually close to you. The ride or dies that you've had, even if that is one person, even if that is a sister or a family member or a cousin or whatever. Lean on the people closest to you to navigate through this season, because all you really need is a couple close people. And outside of that, be open to inviting new friends into your life. You don't need that person. You get to select who you want in your life. If this episode resonated with you, take a second to share it on social media. Make sure you are following the More Than podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you next week.